video is oh, that's recording. We're recording now, so everybody have your best game face. But we're a small group, so feel free to just ask any questions you want. Otherwise, I can start by showing you some stuff, showing you some of my process. But I'd like it to be more geared towards you guys having some questions, and then we'll see if we can get them answered. Um, how about we kick off? I'll show you. This has forced me to look at my reel again. I haven't done my reel in a long time. So I can start off by showing you my latest reel. And then if you want to like, hey, that shot right there, how did you get that? Or if you like have project specific questions, let's do that, okay? And I'd love to I think we're small enough that I can meet you guys and we're let's start there. Maybe an introduction, where you're at in the program, and then why you're interested in taking a cinematography like Zoom. Ask me anything, at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday. Let's start with David.
Hello, I'm David. Um, I've taken most of the studio classes at the program so far, the production for Black Magic, and I just took my lighting course. I have field audio left and the Black Magic Pocket class left, and then I'm working right now with a couple other people on casting a short film. So I'm learning a lot from them, but I'm just sorry, my cats are knocking stuff over. Um, so I'm just in the process of learning as much as I can. So when I do get on set with them, we are quick to go and not wasting any time. So I'm still very new to the whole process, so I'm here to listen a lot. I do have a few questions, but I'm here to mostly hear the other questions that other people along the process of their projects
Figure
are
out what you don't
asking,
know
because
before
there
you
might be questions that I have that I don't even know I have.
exactly. Okay, cool. Nice to meet you, David.
Good to meet you too.
And I think maybe yeah, mute yourself, and then I got Diego. I can see your name, Diego. What's up, Diego?
Hello. So I've been a producer for I think about a year now. Just taking a couple classes to learn a little bit more about. I'm just trying to make some films for fun with my friends. We've shot one so far, and I'm looking to shooting our second. Um, yeah, I don't really have much more than that. I'm
Okay.
interested in this casting call. I might be. I'm also interested in acting, so might be interested there. And I also need to. I'm gonna put out a casting call at Austin Public too. So
Cool. Sunshine?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for creating this gathering. I am new to the community. I just kind of stumbled upon you guys maybe a couple weeks ago, actually. Met Doug, and I have maybe a little bit of a different angle that I'm joining tonight for. So I just got my first class, the media policy class, which blew my mind on how valuable it was. But I'm not a typical producer in the sense that I'm making films with cameras. I just create content and short films for YouTube. I started a channel there a year ago speaking about the intersection between mental health and spirituality. And I actually identify as a voice hearer and do advocacy work and public speaking for people who hear voices. And it was in the endeavor of trying to tell my story when I started this channel a year ago that I got really frustrated because my experiences weren't being able to be reflected in these simple home videos, sitting my camera up in front of my couch. And so I started learning how to use license-free footage and overlaying, hopefully, inspiring and really big epic imagery and audio on top of my story that I'm telling about my experiences. And so I've been really grateful that my YouTube channel has grown a little bit and started speaking at conferences recently. But my heart is really the advocacy work around mental health and spirituality, and the filmmaking is just one of the channels for doing that. So I'm glad to be here tonight with all of you.
Absolutely. Visuals are important nowadays. We communicate through video almost constantly. The information we take in, and now the information you're going to be able to give out visually should be very helpful. Vinay?
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. And thank you for the class. I just started the producer program like last month, so very new to most of the stuff here. But I've been doing a lot of shoots around events, and events and short films is something that has interested me. This year, I look forward to actually working on short films more. I have few events and all that I've done, but they are done with like regular cameras, not very high professionally done. Just want to see how I can actually improvise that and also look into the short films area.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for being here. Varnell?
Hello, um, Cornell. Sorry I'm late. I'm assuming I'm supposed to say something about why I'm joining the class.
Yeah, Varnell, why are you here, dude? You showed up late and we don't even know why you're here. No, I'm just kidding, man. I want to know why you guys are taking a cinematography Zoom, middle of the week at 7. Um,
Right,
and just so we can see, we can have a dialogue and see how we can help each other.
for sure. I took the media policy class back in January, and then just to kind of join AFS and meet some like-minded people, but also get some value for like the resources and stuff. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a cinematographer or trying to be one, but I am trying to create films. I recently moved out here in October. I was living in New York for a while and was able to have some success in like the television area. But now I'm trying to yeah, I'm trying to really kind of jump in the feature department, and I don't. And the thing that I had kind of learned about myself, like in the television department, was that like once I was like around a crew with a bunch of people that knew what they were doing, I kind of just took a step back and was like, all right, y'all know what y'all doing, so I'm good. And now that like none of those people are around, I'm like, shit, I should probably learn something. Yeah, I'm here to listen and learn and get whatever knowledge I can and apply it to whatever areas I need it in. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so it sounds like all of you guys maybe don't specifically have a focus on cinematography. You're kind of looking to piece everything together, and cinematography is a part of it that you know, right? And maybe you just want to be more familiar with it, which is fine, which is great. So maybe we can talk about my working relationship as a cinematographer with a director or producer who doesn't necessarily know anything about what I need to do to get done so that the project gets done, but rather that communication flow, that back and forth, that dialogue between a director and a cinematographer, why that's such a critical relationship. And early on in pre-production, this is part of my job as a cinematographer. So I've been doing this for 15 years now. I moved into Austin. I mostly do short form, commercials, music videos, short narrative, short doc. But I have worked with a lot of new directors, okay? And part of my job is to listen to what the directors are trying to accomplish, right? What is the story? What does it look like, right? And then my job is I'm supposed to know how to make their dream come to life, right? In a practical, efficient manner that represents, the story that they're trying to tell. So part of what you guys need to do as producers and directors is you need to be able to talk to me, right? You need to be able to tell me what it is you're after. So typically, you know what? I'm going to show you my reel, and then there's a clip in there, and we can go through that clip because that was one of the newer directors, and we were able to pull off something really cool. And I could just tell you, I'll show you the clip, and then how he came to me, and then my process from when he came to me as a cinematographer. Deal? So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll play this one, um, and then we'll talk about some of the shots in here. Okay? Uh, I don't think you guys will be able to hear the music, which is fine because I'm not actually, a sound designer. So this was like some kind of track that I bought for this music for my reel. Okay. So specifically, the one I want to talk about is the one with the jazz player where he's dribbling, right? Where he's dribbling the basketball. When Donovan came to me, he's a director I've worked with a couple of times now. When he came to me, it was just an idea, right? He's like, man, I want to use an LED screen. I want to shoot the players in front of the LED screen, and I want to be able to shoot slow motion, right? And I was like, okay, this sounds great. This sounds awesome. So my first job is to know the technical limitations, right, of what he's asking me. Meaning I have to have an understanding of the lighting. I have to have an understanding of this new technology, this Nancy technology that's, making its way into our workflow, which is shooting on LED walls, right? For backgrounds. I had to be very aware of the camera and the technical limitations of the camera and then how all of those elements interface with each other. So as a director of photography, my job is to know the camera, it's to know the lighting, it's to know how the production designer is going to set up everything that I'm not directly responsible for, but that is in the image, right? So director of photography has to have a wide understanding of the technical aspects to pull together film, right? It's the director's job to have the creative, like I've got the story. And then my job is to know what crew to hire, what gear to use to tell that story so that it fits the vision of the director. So it's a years long process to learn this stuff, right? I started working in film 15 years ago in the lighting department, right? So my first foray into film was lighting stuff. And then I moved into the camera department and I learned everything I could about cameras. I've always had a camera, right? And nowadays everyone always has a camera, right? In their phone. So it's always been part of me to have my camera with me or my video camera and be recording stuff, right? That's just something that came to me naturally. But when I first started to make the decision to go into film, I had to go to some of these roles and I had to just learn them from the ground up, right? And it's a really long process. And you should know it's a really long process for everybody, right? If you think just getting started, that's part of the joy of just getting started is how much you have to look forward to because you're going to spend the rest of your career learning about this stuff, right? And you're making the additional steps and the extra steps right now to do that, but just know that this is a forever like kind of learning thing. Every time I take a job now, even now, I learn something new, right? Whether it's a new piece of gear or it's a new camera or it's a new technique, right? Or it's just like learning how to interface with people that I've never worked with before, right? I've got to learn how to get on their page. Sometimes it's as simple as that. I just got to know how to communicate with you, right? Because if I can communicate with you, then together we can come up with something really, really cool, right? So Donovan and I had worked on one project previously, right? And so he came to me and he's like, cool. So like this is the idea. This is the date we're gonna do it. This is my creative, How do we do this? Right? So one of the first things I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up with a diagram. I'm gonna share my screen again. I'll just share them all. So from my diagram, tell me if you guys can see this. Go ahead and chime in. Can you see everything? Can you guys see my screen? Now, can you see it?
Seeing it.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about setting up a lighting diagram, right? So this is a program called Shot Designer, and it allows me to build a lighting plot, right? So can you see my cursor, or do you just see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got a camera right here, right? I've got talent right here, right? And then I start building my lighting plot. So I know, or I knew, right? Right. I needed lots and lots of light to be able to shoot slow motion, right? So I have my big heavy hitters on the sides here, three of them, one, two, three. And those are all shooting through 12 by 12 half grids. Half grid is a type of diffusion with an egg crate. And an egg crate is just a lighting control device. I'll show you what it looks like here in a second. But I know I need to wrap this player in light, and then I also need to be able to backlight them, all right? I don't know what just, oh, somebody wants to come in. We'll let Doug handle that. So then I have three lights in the back here, okay? That winds up looking something like this, right? So this is, we're at the arena, but these are the 12 by 12s. These are literally 12 feet by 12 feet that I then throw my light through, right? They're gonna come in and they're gonna remove this hoop a little bit later on. We got the light set up first, and then they're gonna build the LED wall right here. Okay. But the only reason, and so there are calculations I can do. And this one was a fun one because we actually used our camera was on a robot on this one. So it looks something like, bear with me as I kind of fumble through some of this. Here we go. So then my camera is actually there's no operator. The camera is on a robot in this one. And the reason it's on a robot arm like this is so that we can do repeatable moves, the same moves every time, right? Because when you do something like a project like this, you have a lot of prep time, but you only have 4 minutes with each player, right? So everything has to be very rehearsed and ready to go and repeatable. And the moves look something like this. They're actually kind of cool. So you could see there's a lot of different elements, right? To pull together. And there's a lot of knowledge that I've had to have learned, over the course of a long time. And this is why directors and new directors are best suited to finding a director of photography who has experience, right? You're always going to be better off working with somebody who knows more than you. I'm better off when I work with somebody who knows more than me, right? Because together, if we can communicate, then we can come up with something really, really cool, right? So he gave me the limitations, he gave me the parameters, I knew the gear, and then I had to find a team, right? Part of the DP's job is to hire the crew that brings all this together, right? And so I know the gaffers I like to use. Does anybody not know what a gaffer is? Raise your hand. It's okay if you don't know what a gaffer is. A gaffer is the guy who's in charge of the lighting, right? So as the director of photography, I come up with the lighting plot, right? But I don't necessarily have to know the names of every light that's going to be used or how they operate. But my right-hand man, the gaffer, he does know that, right? And so when I hire my gaffer, I tell him, hey, look, these are my parameters. These are my shooting parameters. This is the f-stop I want to have. And these are our limitations. And from that information, he can put together the right lights, right? And we can start to put together a gear list. Let me see here. That's a shot list. I'm going to share this. And when I start roughing in a gear list, it looks something like, at first it's very basic, right? Like I know I need my truck to carry all the gear. I know I need at least a 1 ton grip package. The grip package is all of the gear that is used to hold and shape lights on lights, or move the camera, hold and move the camera, right? That's the grip department's job. I know the camera, and because I selfishly knew I wanted to shoot with this camera, I checked the specs to make sure that we could get 120 frames per second at 4K. I knew I wanted a zoom lens because I didn't have any time day of to be swapping out lenses, right? So I needed a zoom lens. And then I knew some of my personal preferences, right? And then we put together a lighting list. We put together how we're going to control that list, control those lights wirelessly. And then we start to, add on to our grip package, just a standard grip package, all of the rest of the gear we need, right? Once we do that, right, then we can start to bring this idea to life in real time, right? We wound up, no, I also spent a lot of time working at a gear house early on in my career. So I am very comfortable with gear. And that is something you should also focus on, right? Like you have to communication is key, right? You have to know what you're talking about. And from the director producer side, it's not necessarily you have to know what the gear that's going to be used is, right? But you have to be able to clearly articulate what your vision is going to look like so that someone like me can put together the right tools to do it, right? And so, the first thing, like if you don't know anything about film, just work on being able to clearly articulate the idea that's in your head, right? And one of the ways you can do that is using references, right? Because at this point, we've all watched movies for our entire life. We all have our favorite television shows. We all have our classics, right? So use those. Go to those references and you'd put together your lookbook and you'd say, hey, Joe, this is what it's supposed to look like. I love how the skies look in Paris, Texas, right? Or I love how the camera moves in this movie, right? Or I love the lighting ratio from light to dark because you don't want to, when we put all that time and effort together, you don't want to be kind of finding your look day of, right? Or when you're trying to film it. All of that pre-production, all of that conversation is critical. Before the camera even shows up, we have an idea, we have a plan, right? We come up with a shot list, and then when we get to the day, it's just about execution. That's it, right? Because our plan is in place. And because we have such a good plan, we're able to execute. Or if we ever come to a stopgap, right? Like, oh, shit, we didn't think about this because all of our other elements are in place that allows us the time to find the solution, right? But you don't want to go into your day and just be like, hey, we're gonna make it up as we go, and every time there's a problem, we're gonna solve the problem, right? So as directors, you can start talking, you can start reading about, okay, camera motion. You can take my camera rigs and stabilizers class that I do at AFS, right? APS. Well, we just talk about what is the name of this move, right? When the camera moves from right to left, what am I asking my director of photography to do? Or if I'm the director of photography, what am I asking my camera operator to do? Right? So you got to start learning the lingo, right? You may not know anything about film, but you've got to learn how to communicate, right? To get your idea. That means learning the lingo. That means learning the crew positions, right? That means learning what each crew member is responsible for. Because when you're on set and you look at them and you're like, "Hey, do this," and they tell you, "No, that's not my job," right? You don't want to be in that position, right? Most people aren't mean. They'll just do it, right? But you want to be able to clearly articulate what you're trying to accomplish because you're asking a team to come together and give all their time and energy and effort and technical know-how to bring your vision to life, right? So if you can't clearly articulate your vision, you will never get it shot, right? But if you put in all of that work and you're like, hey, look, I don't know how to do it, but I know how to talk to you about it. And then I'm like, dude, awesome. Awesome. I'm so glad you can talk to me about it because I know how to do it. And anything I don't know how to do, I'm going to make the recommendation that we hire the right crew member to do that, right? Because I can't do everything. So I have a gaffer and I have a key grip and they have their team, right? If we're doing special effects, I have a VFX supervisor on set to make sure we're, crossing our T's and double checking that we dotted all of our I's so that the magic we're trying to pull in front of the camera is happening. But it's also my job to know where my limitations are and be like, look, we need this additional crew. To do that, we need this additional crew or we need this additional gear, right? But it's a collaboration between the director and the director of photography. And then the producer's there to yell at us and tell us we're spending all the money and we shouldn't be spending the money. No, I'm just kidding. Producers are really important. They pull everything together logistically, right? All of the logistics around the actual shooting, right? A producer's pulling all of that together. As a director of photography, I get to just focus on what's going to happen in front of the camera, right? And make sure I have my teams ready to go for what we're actually capturing. A producer's doing everything else I don't want to worry about, right? Producers making sure everybody's getting fed and everybody's getting paid and locations are squared away and insurance is squared away. All of that, I can't do my job without a producer doing that. But they're also there to manage the budget. And so they do sometimes yell at you when you're like, but I would really like a crane. Can I get a crane for this shot? Right? Like sometimes you're going to come up against that. And then you have to learn how to communicate why you need that piece of gear. Why is it worth it? Why do I need the extra budget for this? And can I clearly articulate that I can't do it in another way? Right? So that's like let's pause there and let's talk about this workflow. Does anybody have any questions about what I just went over or clarification? You want to clarify it? Because I'll just keep talking and talking and talking, and then I realize that I'm just talking and I want to stop and ask for questions. Any questions?
Hey, Joe, I have a question.
Yeah,
So, because I don't do what you guys are doing, right? I
right.
just sit at my home desk and spend hours in an editing tool, Final Cut Pro, and create content that way. This may be a really dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
There are no dumb questions.
Uh, well, I appreciate that, but really, why is it so popular to create film the way you guys are doing it? Why is it not more popular? And maybe I'm making some assumptions here. Uh, to make film the way I'm doing it, which is not to hire a crew or actors and to use content that's that you pay for to get the license to use.
Yeah, yeah. So I think maybe you are making a little bit of an assumption because your way is absolutely not wrong. And if you look at the amount of content that's being generated every day for YouTube, 90% of it is exactly how you're doing it, right? And that's also the reason why it, I would say, it does become important to do it like I do it, right? Because if 90 to 95% of the content is being done your way, then it's for me, it's just a matter of elevating my art form, right?
Well, let me just pause you and say, what can you define how you're picturing that way is?
So film has completely changed, right? Because of the accessibility of cameras and lights and audience, right? People, it's democratized. People can use their phone and film anything they want and distribute that to an audience if they can find it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, what I'm talking about specifically is the film industry, right? This workflow is for the film and commercial industry. This is for broadcast television, or this is for distribution in a theater, right?
Right.
Or eventually everything finds its way to the internet, right? So there's no your way is right and my way is better. It's simply a matter of, sometimes I eat ramen noodles at night, and sometimes I put together a three-course meal and eat that. I get nutrition both ways, right?
Yeah, I appreciate your answer, and I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect because I think you're describing a spectrum
Uh-huh.
and talking about the ends of the spectrum, right? So in the middle is what I've been doing, and I don't know, and maybe Doug can chime in here because he did see something I produced, but uh, I don't see a lot of people doing what I'm doing. And in the middle of that spectrum is I don't use my phone. I use an Osmos 3, DJI Osmos 3. But I do use some of that footage that I create myself, but I'm mostly using basically the same kind of heart and eyes that I think that filmmakers use,
Mhm.
which is to create art and tell a story. And for me, the story is the most powerful thing. In the most effective way, which tends to be very beautiful imagery and music, in my opinion. I mean, not just the way I'm doing it, but this approach.
Mhm.
And maybe again, Doug, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, but I,
Yeah.
I think I asked Doug, you asked when I met you, do you think this is common? And you said, no, I don't think it is. So correct me if I'm wrong here.
Yeah, I think the maybe just the link of sort of connecting the dots here, because I know both perspectives, is if you can think about it this way, that you're taking like stock footage off of the internet or wherever you're finding the footage that you feel really aligns with like the vision you have, like you're almost like creating like the mood board in the sense of what you want to that goes along with your dialogue and the music. But if you think about it, a lot of it, I mean, your hiking stuff, someone's using just probably a camera on a small gimbal like while they're hiking out in Arizona and New Mexico area. But a lot of that stuff probably was shot. Like if you think about Joe and a crew, you know, would be filming the things that they are then uploading and selling to a stock footage website for someone like yourself who is then buying it and editing these beautiful shots all together and then filming yourself talking at home and telling the story and then adding the music in. So you're taking all these visuals, but those visuals were produced professionally, a lot of them by probably a small production crew at some point, or again, a lot of it's nature shots. But
a lot of it was, looked pretty professional. So I think, a lot of what Joe is talking about is probably would have gone into filming the things that you were then taking off of that stock footage website to then add to your video.
Okay.
If that helps kind of connect the dots there. And I think another thing I think like what you're doing works so perfectly for your vision and sort of the storytelling that you're doing. But if someone wrote a script and wanted to then go out and shoot that script, you're probably not going to be able to make up the whole film with just the stock footage you know, off of online. You could get your establishing shot and some other things that maybe you don't have a budget for, but you're still going to have to film talent, reading out the lines and stuff on your script. So I think for what you're doing, it works perfectly for you to grab that stuff and put it all together, and it really works. But for a more commercial work, if you're hired for a for a company, or if you're trying to do a script and stuff, like you have to create a lot of this from the ground up, from scratch, because you're telling a very specific story based on who's hired you or that script. So hopefully that helps.
That's really helpful. Okay, thank you. And last question for you, Doug, since you're a bridge right now. I appreciate everybody's patience while I finish this question. Why do you think what I'm doing, whatever we want to call that, which I think you described beautifully, why do you think it's not more common?
I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like, it in my experience, people who have something that they want to tell, like a story, whether it's personal story, interview people, whether it's small businesses or highlight a community or a nonprofit work or your specific, story and background. I think a lot of people trend towards like podcasting, these days or like talk shows and stuff. So I don't know. I couldn't really tell you. I think maybe you're just a lot more visual, maybe, or just you just really sort of see like how those visuals and like the music. It's almost sort of like a meditation type environment. Listening to like your voice telling the story with the music and like the nature scenes and stuff. And I think it just really fits what you're describing and discussing,
Okay.
and that also, is very unique. I think as well. So I don't know. I don't really, everyone's sort of got my experience with public access TV, having been here so long, that usually when someone's like, I only care about what I want to talk about, they may not care about the visuals as much. The old school public access, like talk show, like back like Alex Jones era with like a white table, no tablecloth and a blue curtain that wasn't chroma keyed. And you just sat down and talked about politics. I mean, you didn't care about how it looked. It was about what you were saying and the fact that people could hear you say it. So I think your approach is very unique in the fact that like you are focused on what, your focus is what you're saying, but you care so much about how it's coming off, just like the whole, everything. It's the audio, it's the visuals, and what you're saying, it's the message as well. And so it just all sort of syncs together really well. Whereas my experience is people mostly who care about what they're saying could do it just through a podcast, and you're just watching people talk. So
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Thank you. That's very
yeah.
helpful. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. And again, I just want to reiterate, Sunshine, that there is no like I said, it's art, right? Um, but at a certain point, though, you create art for yourself, right? Or if you get so good at that, somebody's going to hire you to create that art for them, right? And they may have stipulations like, hey, this all has to be original footage. You can't just go get this footage and curate it, right? So there's just different ways to get there. But if you're using visuals to tell your story, then I don't think there's a huge difference between what you're doing and how some of these other producers might approach telling a story, right? Or getting a message across, and then just choosing to do their visuals for that, right? It's just the paintbrushes that you're picking and the way you're choosing to utilize it, right? And then you may come to the point where you're like, hey, I'm monetizing this. So now it's not nearly as easy to just curate a bunch of clips. I have to have the rights to the clips and I have to pay for them. And some of those clips now start to cost me thousands of dollars, or I can only use them for 2 weeks. And then you might say to yourself, hey, I've got a DJI Osmo, why don't I just hike up the mountain or hike on the trails and get my own footage? You may yet come to that. You may yet want to have more control over the imagery that you're presenting, right? You may not be there yet, but there's no right or wrong here right now. It's just a different workflow. The workflow I'm talking about is dependent on collaboration. And I think that's one of the coolest things about what we do, right? There's fine artists who they don't ever have to collaborate, right? All they need is their easel and their paints, and they can create whatever they want. Or they're photographers, right? Who don't ever have to talk to anybody to get the image they want. But what's unique about motion pictures and cinema is that it requires a team of like-minded individuals collaborating across a wide spectrum of skills and talents, and all of you guys pointed in the same direction at one time and coming up with something that is effective. There's a beautiful power in that, right? And it's wonderful. And if you get the chance to experience it, right, to put together a team to utilize to capture your image, I would say don't discount the beauty that can come out of that collaboration from having different minds, but like-minded minds in the same room, creating together, right? It's part of what makes this whole process very special.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I actually put on a 3-day conference in February 2 years ago called the
Mhm.
Conscious Awakening Conference here in Austin. It was a full production team, recorded live, and and it had 11 speakers from around the United States telling their story on a stage for 45 minutes, and a whole bunch of really cool music and supported visual and performing artists here in Austin. And it was a high when
Yeah,
when you're doing that. And I've worked with teams. I mean, I'm retired now, but in my past life, I worked with high functioning teams in tech for a long time. So I know that drug we get when we're collaborating, but it's really special when it moves into something like the arts.
absolutely. I'm going to
Um,
swing us back to our process. Yeah, who's got that question? Varnell, go ahead, sir.
yeah, I just wanted to ask about, you talked about the project you did with the jazz, and I guess if you could clarify moving forward, or even like with whatever that you already talked about. And by the way, I do love what you said about the language and everything like that. But as far as like what the difference is when working on like independent projects, because I know, jazz, you got a big budget, all of that. But as far as like I don't want to speak for everybody in this room, but I'm pretty sure that nobody's making $1 million, what I mean, projects.
Yeah.
So, the difference with the crew of people, you look on the page, you got 10 days to shoot it, but you only got money for 4. You know what I mean? So if you could just speak to that experience a little bit moving forward, or if you already kind of like glazed over it or something.
No, I mean, so look, everybody has to start somewhere, right? I would suggest, though, that you have an end goal, right, in mind. So you may be starting with independent, no budget, low budget projects, right? But if your aim is to only do low budget, no budget, then your workflow that you develop, right, and successfully implement and get that low budget, no budget project done, there's nothing wrong with it, right? It worked. But if your end goal is to have $1 million budget, right? Then the work you put into the low budget, no budget, right? The preparation, the attention to detail, right? The planning, none of that changes depending on budget. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world or no money in the world. The pre-production process, the communication, the clear ideation of what you're trying to create, right, stays the same. And eventually, after you knock off success after success after success, the tools start to change, right? Or the crew starts to expand, right? because the vision's gotten so big that you can't pull it off by yourself, right? So one thing you can do to help yourself is prepare every project like it's a $10 million project. Because otherwise, why are you doing it? You know, if it's important enough that you're going to bleed and sweat and cry over it, it deserves your attention, right? At the beginning. And that attention to detail doesn't all of a sudden go away when somebody writes you a check. But because you've prepared yourself like that on every project, when somebody writes you a check, you don't have to change nothing, right? You just have to hire some more people and get some more locations and get some more gear. But your workflow, the details and the intricacies of your workflow, what makes you tick and what makes your project successful, that doesn't have to change, right? So, but a couple of things you can do to help yourself when you have no budget is be practical, right? Understand your limitations. And if you have access now to Austin Public's gear, but you don't know how to use it, then it makes no sense to bring it to set, right? So understand your limitations and then just add a little bit more technical know-how every time you turn on your camera. Hey, the first time we didn't have any lights. We just had a camera and we were outside. But this next one, I don't want to do that again. I want to be able to go into the living room and make it look like we're outside, right? Or whatever, right? Or still using natural daylight. So you can build your skill set, right? Project by project, but the workflow and the effort that you put in now shouldn't change.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
I got a question, kind of in the conversation of a DP or cinematographer working with different people on set. How involved, and like in this reel, there are some situations like maybe this commercial. How involved are you in, or like how much involved is the editing process and how you're shooting? Like, because
Yeah.
you could shoot this and then it just gets taken to an editing room that you're not in. And are there like tactics to like considering what might happen to the footage and edit?
Yeah. So this is more of a director question, right?
Mm,
I am of the firm belief that every director should know how to edit, right? Because if you know how to edit as a director, then you know how to direct a scene from start to finish, right? You can
mm,
visualize the cuts before they happen, right? And because you
mm,
visualize the cuts, you don't have to worry that we never moved the camera to the left side of the room and got that angle, right?
mm,
Because you're picturing the edit already. As a director of photography, right? As long as I'm making my day, I will turn on the camera and film anything the director wants, right? But I also know how to edit. So if I'm collaborating with a director, a new director especially, and they're like, hey, man, I don't know if I need this shot. Because I know how to edit personally, we can have a conversation right there and then. And I'd be, hey, man,
mm,
you got the wide, you got the over, like, and you maybe want one insert. What else are you looking for, right? You have a complete scene, and we can talk that through, right?
mm.
But that's not actually my job as a DP. And so like you tell me to shoot that way, we're gonna shoot that way till you get your performance. And you tell me to shoot that way, and I'm gonna say, let's shoot performance, right?
Yeah.
Um, I will, when I do a shot list, let me share this with you. When I do a shot list with my director, this is part of the conversation that happens right at the beginning, right? Let me share this screen. This is a different project, right? And this is something I put together with a director while we still have the script, right? Uh, like just the script's been written. So we're looking at I'm immediately starting to rough in like, hey, is this a close up or a wide or a medium close, right? Is there any camera movement? Should we be pushing in? Are we pulling out? What kind of gear? If there is movement, What kind of gear am I using, right? And then I have a shot description here, right, of what's happening. So I start thinking about this stuff when I get the script, right? And then I'm talking to the director about it. Hey, listen, this scene is dynamic. There's lots of camera movement, right? The camera never stops moving. We should get a steady cam, right?
Mm.
We're starting to have these conversations in pre-production. Okay. One of the things now, if I slip that question back over to director of photography, right? And you talk about like what can I do to protect my image, right? That is a very real problem. Is I can shoot something and I have an idea of what it should look like in my head, and then that footage gets moved on to post-production, to the
Mhm.
editor or to the colorist, and they edit it and they color it, and it comes back, and I'm like, what does this look like? This doesn't even look like anything that we
Yeah.
had a plan for, right? And so as a director of photography, there's a term where we want to capture it in camera, right? The digital cameras we have nowadays, they're amazing. They are amazing instruments, and they give you all of the latitude in the world to make changes in post, right? But if I have a specific idea and we have a vision when we're filming it, then me as a cinematographer, I want to capture that in camera. And that means using filters and using lookup tables on our reference monitors so we can say, look, the blacks are supposed to be this crushed, or the blues are supposed to look like this, and the reds are supposed to look like this. And if I put this diffusion filter in, nobody's going to make that halation in the highlights disappear,
Mm.
right? And so I want to do as much as I can to capture it in camera, right? And to that end, that's how it used to be, right? When you had your eye to the viewfinder and you're shooting film, right? There was a limited amount of things that you could do to that film after it was exposed to the image, right? You could color time it, you could maybe brighten it up a little bit, you could darken it down a little bit, bleach bypass it if you were going to get real creative. But what you captured is what you got. So there was a real care and effort being made on set to light it the way it should be lit, right? To move the camera the way it should be moved, to frame it the way it should be framed, because none of that stuff was going to change with the edit, right? Just the beats, the story beats were going to change. Nowadays, our cameras allow us to just hit record and go, right? And then whatever we get back, we'll make the changes if we have to. We'll make it look right. We'll reframe it. We'll move the image around. We'll color it this way. We'll darken it by 3 stops, and here you go, right? So this is back to like this is my art form, right? Because this is my art form, I want to paint with light on the canvas, right? And I want to give you that canvas, and here it is. Here's the image. It looks done. I don't want to give you my painting and then you turn and hand it to somebody and be like, yeah, add some yellow to this. And they come in with a yellow paintbrush and they're like, "Boom, boom, 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 boom," right? Like that's just me caring as an artist, right? And sometimes that decision is taken away from you. You're not in charge. It's not your project, right? They're gonna do whatever they want with the footage once they have it. And that can be a bummer, you know? Sometimes that decision is taken away from you. But anytime I can, I want to capture it in camera. I want that image when I'm filming it to represent the final image when it's done.
Thank you.
Kind
Yeah.
of piggybacking off of the cameras, is there any like you said like the last thing you were saying is how it's become easier, or not so much easier, but just faster with the new cameras that you can finish it in post. Are there any pitfalls that you are coming across with the continual increase of resolution of these cameras and their accessibility to make your job easier?
So I would say, one, if it is still possible to make technical mistakes with these cameras, right? And there is a lot of latitude in post-production to fix those mistakes, but sometimes you just can't, right? So say you've underexposed it and you've crushed all of your shadows. There's no coming back from that in post. There's no pulling more detail out of information that doesn't exist, right? So it is possible to mess up the image still, right? That's a definite pitfall. there is so much grace and latitude in these sensors though now that if you're in the ballpark, right, you're likely with a good editor, a good colorist, you're likely gonna be okay, right? But I mean, just listen to that, right? Like, isn't that a pitfall when your final project, when your final image is okay, it's serviceable, you know? And then compare and contrast that to putting all of that time and effort into shaping something beautiful, right? It may be technically okay, but is okay what you want, right? Or did you want to dial that image in with nuance, right? And then here is better than okay, right? The camera will get you both places, right? The operator and the creative vision is what separates the two. So the pitfall is relying too much on the camera. The camera is a dumb piece of equipment, right? It's got a power button, and if you turn it on, it's going to do the same thing every time. It's never going to stop and think, is that okay? Right? Can I be better? That's on you at that point. But again, that's maybe my soapbox because this is my art, you know? Any other questions?
Yeah, I got one last one. When on your shot list, when you just showed that, how much of the blocking was done while you guys were shot listing, or is it just like a general like, okay, we're in this kind of room, so these are kind of shots we need?
Well, at that stage, it is kind of general, right?
Oh,
And what you're looking there is like, that's my first pass through the script. I'll come up with that first version, right? And then sometimes you'll go on your location scout. You'll do that shot list, and then you'll see the location. And you'll be like, oh man, that idea of that camera coming down and in like this doesn't work here. The ceilings are too short. So let's come up on this scout. Can we still use this location? Are we locked into this location? Okay, then we've got to change that move, right? So it's an ongoing dialogue, right? And there will be times like so that shot list goes to your first AD, and your first AD schedules the day, the shooting day, based on your shot list that you and the director come up with. They're like, hey, how much time are each of these going to take? We've got 10 hours, boom, 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 and they'll schedule it all out for you, right? And then sometimes still, you've made the shot list and you've looked at the location, you've done your tech scout, and then you show up on the day of, and the actor's got a better idea with what they're going to do with their motion, right? And so you're like, okay, that goes away. We're not doing that. We're just planting the camera right here and we're locking it off. We're lit and we're not moving it. That idea
yeah,
I had of moving the camera, it was cool in my head, but here in the moment, it's not suitable, right? So it's like a living document, right? We're not locked into anything. It's more like a roadmap though, because we took the time to think about it, right? We had a plan going in. It's really easy to pivot from a plan if you have it on paper, right? Rather than just be like every decision we make,
right,
we could be going left or right. We don't know yet, right? So it's even if you throw it away, Ronell, it's still important to put into place in the first place, right?
right. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. What else, guys? Hit me with some more. Any other questions?
I know we talked a little bit earlier about, oh, sorry, Vinay, you
No, I can wait. I can wait. No worries. Please go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
David, you can go ahead. Yeah.
go ahead, Vinay. Sorry.
Okay. Actually, I just wanted to know, like, the DP or the cinematographer. So, when does he starts getting involved when it comes to making a short film or any kind of film, right? So, what is their checklist that needs to be there before they actually can start thinking about the project?
Yeah, so first I get the script. One of the first things I ask is like, hey, what is the budget here, right? Because me hiring crew and making sure we secure the right equipment, that's just a logical question, right? Do you have money to hire this amount of crew or not? That doesn't mean the project can't be done, right? It's just a very real question that needs to be asked. Once we establish a budget, that might say, oh, hey, the budget is nothing. Okay, cool. All these fancy tools, we don't need them for this one, right? Now I'll ask you, okay, what are your like dream shots on this one? Like when you close your eyes and you've got this script that you've developed, like what is the one thing that just pulls this together for you, right? And you might be like, oh man, so this is like I've had this shot in mind since I wrote the script. I wrote the whole entire script around this shot, and it goes like boop, 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 or whatever that is. Then I'm gonna be like, okay, let's make that one happen, right? Let's sacrifice some other things if we have to, right? Let's figure out how we make that one happen for you for this project, right? Once I know that, then I'll start to do like logistically. I'll like, hey, I'll start to call crew. Are you available on these dates, right? So I need to know when we're filming this, right? I need to know budget. I need to know when we're filming it. Once I know that, then I can start hiring crew, right? Seeing if they're available, if they want to be on the project, and I can start working with the rental houses. In your guys' instance, the rental house is APS, right? You can start you can start reserving and checking out gear from APS. But there are lots of rental houses, right? And it is part of the workflow when you're making films is to have relationships with these rental houses, right? To know what kind of gear that one rental house might have versus another, right? And so I'll start making calls and be like, hey, listen, I need an Alexa 35. Do you have one for this week? Yeah, we do. Okay, perfect. When I hire my first AC and he's got a contract, he's going to need a prep day on this day and he's going to put together a package for this camera, right? Same thing with a grip and lighting rental house. Be like, hey, you got a 5-ton truck available. This is my gaffer. He's going to put together the final list of things we actually need. He's going to come and prep them and he's going to get them all loaded up, right? And then what else would I would ask if they had any special effects, right? If it's heavy in special effects or if it's heavy in VFX. If it's heavy in VFX, does the director themselves know how to do VFX? If not, then we need a VFX supervisor, right? We need somebody who specializes in that so that I can make sure the technical elements I'm pulling together on the physical location will interface with the technical elements the VFX team is going to put together in post-production, right? To make sure that we're bridging that gap so that there's no surprises when they're sitting in front of their camera. And if there's heavy special effects, I need to know, are you bringing in rain machines? Are you bringing in snow machines? Is there fire involved, right? Like these are also things I need to prepare for. Um, what else do I need to prep for? And then, man, it's like it's an ongoing conversation with the director. Like from the moment I get hired until like we're done and post is wrapped, we're always talking about the project. That's part of my job.
Thank you.
Kind of really quickly, just piggybacking off of that question, how much prep time would you allow yourself?
Sometimes you get a lot of prep time, right? Sometimes you don't get any prep time. The project's just like now gonna happen, right? My personal preference is always to have more prep time, right? Because if I have more prep time, I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna spend time making lighting diagrams. I'm gonna spend time scouting locations. I'm gonna spend time familiarizing myself with equipment if I don't have it, right, in hand. Every amount of prep time you give me, I will use, right? Because that's my workflow. Most people who do this type of work, that's their workflow. They want to be intimately involved as much as possible for as long as possible because once you hit record, what you get is what you get. Other times you just got to roll with it, man. And the and that's always uncomfortable, right? It never stops being uncomfortable when you've got to let go of that prep time. So early on into your careers, build more prep time than you think you're going to need, right? Because the only thing that makes that a little bit more comfortable later on, losing that prep time, is experience, right? You'd be like, oh man, I have actually been in this situation before. I hate you for it, but we'll do it. We'll make it happen with zero prep, right? The only way you're going to get to that point though is by building in the right habits at the beginning of your career, which means giving yourself more grace, giving yourself more prep time, giving yourself more time to dot your I's and cross your T's, right? And eventually, man, like don't fall in love with prep too much because eventually you just gotta go. Just gotta make it happen. David, you had a question?
Thank you.
And surprisingly, you kind of already answered it with Vinay's question because my question was pretty much when you're working on a budget, what's the first thing you see go? And like what would you clarify as like the easiest sacrifice that won't compromise your vision? And what's the most common one you've come across in your experience?
A camera, right? Some people fall in love with the name brand of a camera. As a director of photography, my job is not to fall in love with a camera. My job is to make the director's vision come to life in his budget, right? So I can't be like, hey, I need the most expensive camera to do this work because I know I get my best work out of this camera. I will fight for lenses for much longer than I'll fight for the camera, right? Because lenses have a more direct impact on the image that can't be changed in post. All of these cameras are wonderful nowadays, right? Some of them are substantially more expensive to rent per day than others. So the first thing I give up, because I don't want to give up crew for a camera, right? If you're telling me I've got to find $700 in the budget, fire your gaffer, or I'll be like, no, let's just give me a different camera. Let's find a less expensive camera because I'm going to do better work with a team than with me and a camera. The other one you got to worry about when you're a director or producer starting out is period pieces cost a ton of money, right? If everybody's supposed to be in costume, that costs money. You can't do anything about that in post, right? Locations can get very expensive. So if you like wanted to be shooting at the museum and they're like $2,000 a day for us to shut down this wing, maybe you've got to rewrite that, right? You've got to come up with locations get expensive, insurance gets expensive, gear gets expensive, people are expensive. Keep your people as long as you can.
With the you said you'd fight for lenses over the camera, and then this is specific to your reel. There's one shot that was very interesting to me. It's on a doorway, and the hallway seems to breathe and expand. How did you do that? Like
That
that's
that is called a Zolly, right? It was made famous by Jaws. Steven Spielberg did the Jaws shot. What is actually physically happening there is that my camera and I are on 80 feet of track, right? So that hallway was a set on a sound stage, right? So it was just three walls, the back wall with the door, and then the hall walls, and then they had a roof on top of it. Out the other end of the hallway, I had 80 feet of dolly track. And then I have a zoom lens on the camera. And as that camera physically moves, the zoom lens changes focal length, right? And that makes that expansion and contraction of that physical space happen because the camera body is physically moving and then the lens is counteracting that movement at the same time. Look it up. Look up Zolly or Dolly Zoom, and you'll see it. You'll people. It's in my reel because technically that is a very very fun shot to pull off. Right, it's something people notice. What do you guys think? Anything else?
I've got a question on color palette, which I'm just curious if that is something that I'm assuming is decided before you start shooting. Are there instances where it's like something that you've shot it and then now you're afterward trying to impose a certain color scheme on a
Yeah, I mean, back to David's question, like, what are some pitfalls, right? If you haven't thought of your color palette before
Mm,
you start shooting and then you get into post, you might have enough latitude in your camera to come up with something creative, right?
hmm
What might happen more often and still feel somewhat planned, right, is that you go to your tech scout, right? Your tech scout is when you actually go to the location that's been picked for the scene, and you take your team there on a tech scout, and you're like, okay, this is the box they're putting us in. How do we bring the vision to life in this box? I might get there and they'd be like, hey, there's a giant red wall right here. And we don't have an art department or a budget to get rid of that red wall. Okay, it's part of the scene. Let's
hmm
think about some complementary colors that are going to look good in this location.
mm,
You know,
yeah.
absolutely, man. If you can design your color palette in your pre-production, that's where you want to be.
And I'm guessing it seems like it's motivated by look. If you're deciding location before, then you want to think about how this location is going to interplay with that palette.
Yeah. They influence each other, right? And this is
Hmm
why the dialogue is so back and forth at the beginning. It's like give a little here, take a little there, get a little bit more there, give up a little bit there.
hmm Thank you.
We had someone pop in. Lisa, do you got any questions?
Oh, hold on, sorry, let me get my camera on. Um, I guess I just had one question kind of related to the conversation here a little bit. So you've got this kind of DP toolbox, right, of things that you feel are most essential for, you being able to do the creative work that you want to do. Is there anything in there that those of us who aren't as familiar with the role, like, might not necessarily think would be in that, whether it's a actual tool or it's a technique or it's a relationship or something more ephemeral that we would want to consider.
I kind of hammering this point, but I hope I'm not beating a dead horse. So the most important thing, if you have no tools, is communication, right? You have to be able to clearly articulate your idea. Um, and that will get you very far, right? Because if you can clearly articulate your idea, then you can clearly articulate your own shortcomings, right? And as you're starting out, you should never hesitate, right? Once you have your team, right? When you're talking to like the money people, never tell them, "Oh, I don't know if I could do this," right? You always tell them you could do it. But once you have your team, right? Be very comfortable being like, this is my idea and I don't know how to do it, right? Because hopefully you've got the right team around you to be like, no problem, boss. We have done this before, right? So there's an adage, it's like fake it till you make it. And that'll get you maybe the job. But once you have the job, drop that fake it till you make it. If you don't know, collaborate, okay? Because that's why you have a team. And if all of you guys don't know, then you get to make something up, right? And hopefully it works. But you're all on the same page. Like, we're trying this because we just don't know. Um, when you talk about people too, so one of the most, as a DP, one of the most important relationships you can have, besides with the director, you've got your three key guys underneath you. You've got your gaffer, who is in charge of lighting. You've got your key grip, who is in charge of all of the rigging and infrastructure for the cameras and lights, right? And you have your first AC, who is the head of your camera team. He's there to design your camera package, make sure all of the bits and pieces are working, and he also pulls focus, okay? But one thing you should never overlook is how to talk to and buy yourself a little bit of grace with the first AD, right? The first assistant director's job is safety and schedule, right? To get you through the day. So the person who's always going to be mad at you when it takes you a little bit longer to set up than you thought is going to be the first AD. because every time you take an extra 15 minutes, they're taking that 15 minutes and moving it to the back of their schedule. And then all of a sudden you're into overtime or you're just not going to make your day. And they start to get very stressed, right? So you have to learn how to talk to your first AD. You have to learn how to explain to them, like, listen, man, I underestimated the time it would take to set this up, but we've just got to get it, right? And we've got to get it because X, Y, Z. You can fall into the trap of just being like flaring up and being like, no, I don't have to explain myself to you. We're equal department heads. I'm gonna do what I want to do. You go worry about someone else, right? And that's a bad workflow. So again, it comes back to communication, but never overlook what your first AD can buy you, right? As far as grace, because they can look around and they can be like, okay, well, if I actually shift lunch by half an hour, we're still not going to go into overtime. You'll have the time you need. I don't have to ask for grace. There's not going to be any meal penalties. Okay, you have your time, right? Because your director is not going to do that for you, right? Your director is just going to be like, yeah, please get what I want. Please, 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 you know? And they're going to be on the side of like your side and stressing out that first AD. But once you come to head with that first AD and you just like have a piss poor relationship from the beginning, it adversely affects the whole workflow, right, of the entire project. So never underestimate the first AD. And then also, if you're working with a shitty first AD, take no shit, right? Like just tell them no. No, it's got to be done. It's got to be done, and we're gonna fight about it. If you have to, right? To protect the image. But first, try and develop a good working relationship with your first AD.
Man, this is like a loaded question, but and it obviously also like varies based on, experience and all that stuff. But what should a DP be charging? Like, and I'm asking from the perspective of, as someone who's trying to, filmmaker, and it's like, okay, I'm going out hiring, looking for DPs. Obviously, experience is more experience, you're going to charge more. But I'm just kind of wondering what across the board, because somebody tells me a number, I'm just like, oh, okay, and then you're just kind of like shopping and asking people around. So just from your perspective, how could you, yeah,
Yeah, so okay, it's all budget dependent, right? But you're
yeah,
right. At a certain point, your day rate is your day rate, right? So for paid commercial gigs with a DP that is not represented by an agency, you can expect them to ask for 2,000 to $2,500 a day, right? That seems like a lot of money though. More importantly, underneath a DP, there are his three keys, right? Most key positions in a paid commercial setting, they are between 700 and $850 a day, right? For their position, a 10-hour day. So as a DP, I will make concessions to that point, right? For a paid gig because I don't want to lose my team, but
hmm
I also don't want to make less than my team, right? So if that's just like a standard day rate for the like three of the most critical people on a set, right? Your gaffer, your key grip, and your first AC. Their standards are 700 to 850 for a 10-hour day, right? But dude, I have worked for much less than that, right? And it's because the director comes to me and is like, this is a no budget, low budget thing. Um, I have $100 a day. I'm gonna be like, let me see the script. Is it a good script? All right, let's make something beautiful. Do I have the time? Let's do it. Right? That, but I want to do that for somebody. I want to do that for a director or a producer who can look me in the eyes and clearly articulate the pain we're going to go through and why it's worth it at the end of that project, right? And if you can do that, you can you can work with the people you want to work with, right? Never forget that everybody in film loves art, right? There are a million different ways to make a really good day rate, right? And it is nice to get paid and recognized for what you do. But people in film love this. They love the long days. They love the crazy hours. They love the crazy locations. They love the camaraderie of the crew, right? And
Mm,
so don't be afraid to believe in your project so much that you try and get the right person on there, right? And it doesn't necessarily at your level mean buying them, right?
mm.
Or buying their rate. If you have, and then dude, so that also that rate can skyrocket, right? If you
Yeah.
have if you have a repped DP, right, meaning they have an agency, then they immediately jump to $4,000 a day.
Is
Right?
it is this the race that you gave? Is that including like that comes with all of their equipment and stuff, or is that like a separate
No,
price?
no. So
Separate.
it's called a
Wow.
kit for crew members. It's called a kit fee, right? Or DP if they own their own cameras. Most of the time, they will sublease that camera through the camera rental house, right? And the camera rental house will handle all of the billing with production and
Mhm.
take a small cut of that and then give the rest to the DP. But so no, most of the time that day rate does not include your kit fee, right? If they're bringing any additional equipment on.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Look, it can be expensive, and this is to Sunshine's point, right? Like this traditional method of doing film is not the only way to capture a beautiful image, right? But in the system that plays at the very highest level, right, and produces the content that we're all familiar with and love, there are some standards, right? That hard-earned standards that nobody wants to backtrack on, right?
Yeah. I'm just like I'm really curious because I'm inside of this zone where I'm just kind of like watching movies that have these super low budgets where like, you know, anywhere from like 50K to 10K and stuff like that. And I'm just like trying to piece in my head together like, okay, how they do this,
Yeah.
you know, with
So a
with
lot of that, so a large part of your budget always is the cost of your crew, right? So when you see a really well put together low budget film, most
Mhm.
of the time that crew has taken concessions on their day rate to get the project done. But you saw it, right? You
Right.
watched. So if it's the type of project that you and I are watching, right? And they got it done for 50K, it's because the crew bought in to that director or producer's vision, right? And it was so well thought out that they did it with next to no money, and it's still hitting our eyeballs, right? That's the difference between all of the ones that were made for 25 to 50K that you and I will never ever see, right? They just because that happens, right? There are lots of stuff. There is lots and lots of content that is made for no money that nobody watches. And then you get all existential and you're like, well, I'm just doing it for the art. Okay, this is a tough field to just to ask everybody to give you your time and energy and effort for no recompense, right? And you might get to do that one time.
Cool. I'm gonna go get a different job. Thanks for talking me out of my dream.
No, man. So listen, dude, I mean, come on. So many people in this industry work more than one job, especially right now. The market is contracting. It's getting harder and harder to make quality projects with big crews and big budgets. That's the reality of life, you know? And as things change, right, and content becomes more accessible, there is a possibility that the working methodology I'm talking about might go to the wayside. You're just never ever going to get to work with a crew of 25 plus people, right? That doesn't mean that the content you're creating by yourself with or next to nobody with no budget, low budget, that you shouldn't put the care and effort and attention in that you would if you were going to make something big. You know, that's the only thing that's going to separate you, right? Is like this isn't easy, but I have seen nothing to suggest it should be easy, right?
Mm.
Because the stuff that is easy, it's disposable, right? We're inundated with content right now. Every second of every day, you're getting some kind of video feed, right? And then there's the stuff that makes you stop and say, oh, dang, I love movies, you know, or I love film. And it's just going to be how you approach it. But now don't give up before you get started.
I actually don't know how to give up. So
Yeah, there you go. I would feel so bad if I do a
wish I
if I do a Zoom and 1/5 of the audience is I'm never doing this again.
yeah. Um
Cool. Anything else?
I've got a more detailed question, just specifically, how do people do like or there's different ways to approach a shot in a like a scene in a car, in a moving car. What is the easiest, like least cost effective, like not having to strap a camera on the side to get that shot?
What is the easiest, most cost-effective way to film someone driving a car?
Or just filming dialogue inside of the car.
So
Um,
you could do like
hopefully, like you could tell that it's moving, but I guess
so
they don't need to be actually driving.
people do a poor man's process, right? And that's when they will put a green screen on the other side of the car,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then they'll either shake the car a little bit or they'll give some indication that movement is happening. They'll pan lights across the car. They will drag shadows, they'll drag, flags or cucurullos of some sort across
Mm,
the lights so it looks like movement's happening, right? And
mm,
then they'll replace the footage in the green screen, right?
mm-hmm,
Like a poor man's process. Um, how they do it, I mean, on the other end of the spectrum is they'll put the car on a trailer, right? A process trailer. The camera
mm,
operators will be along for the ride as that's happening, right? Or on car commercials, they have the car attached to a pursuit, the camera attached to a pursuit car, right? Which is a fast vehicle that has a crane on it with a camera on the end of the crane, right? So that's the opposite end of the spectrum. But if you were doing it with low budget, no budget, you would try and do a poor man's process. It's called.
mm.
that oh go ahead, Diego. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Just quick question. Are there like legal implications to having an actor drive a car and
Yes,
have like a camera on them?
100%. It's not legal, it's insurance purposes, right?
Mm.
But then you're getting into like producer stuff.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't confidently give you the right path to take. But yes, if you're having your actor actually drive the car, then there are certain insurance requirements you have to hit to do that properly.
Mm,
Legally, the cops don't care, right? But your insurance that affects how the production's done absolutely cares whether or not your actual talent is actually driving
mm,
in the scene.
Um yeah, the workaround for that, Diego, is if you're the actor and you want to drive it, you want to just I don't know. I've done that before. Like, all right, I'll drive it. Nobody else will.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would say the lines too. But I I yeah, you know what? You know it's why I'm like grateful you kind of asked that question because I didn't want to ask because that's like literally what I'm working on right now, but I've been watching like a lot of films that are just kind of like car heavy. Um, you should check out like Wheelman or Lock with Tom Hardy. They kind of just take place all in the
Yeah,
car.
Locke is
It's
great,
I
right?
love Locke.
Action, or there's a lot of just performance in that.
a lot of like dialogue. There's also Daddy-O with Sean Penn. I haven't watched it yet because I started watching it and it started feeling boring. But I'm just sit back just for like the shots. But if you watch them, you can kind of see. I was watching Training Day the other day, and Denzel,
That's good.
there's like scenes where he's like rolling a joint, not looking at the road at all, but like
Mhm.
driving, and it's like clear that he's not actually driving that car,
Uh-huh.
going like 40 miles an hour. Um, but I had my question, Joe, was about like so. I've seen on YouTube. I've like watched a couple of guys, do the poor man, the green screen thing, and I've been to the studio, Studio One, and I saw like the loading dock and stuff like that, and I was just like wondering if there was actually a way to get a. I mean, you obviously could get a real car in there, but like, has somebody kind of come in there and shot like with the prop, half a car or whatever in that studio?
So if Doug's on, he might be able to answer that. I haven't seen it happen.
Yeah, it's been done. And not by, from my experience, not by a producer. We've done it for production services for because AFS can get hired for production work. But this is actually the previous nonprofit. But yeah, the prop room would have to be cleaned out because it's full of, other like props and chairs and news desk and stuff. But yeah, the loading dock, garage door, and then the double doors into the studio is big enough. We were hired for a production shoot where someone had made a Longhorn shaped brake light for a car, and they brought in a convertible into the studio, and so we weren't doing green screen, but we were just doing product shots of the brake light in use, and they hired Vince Young for their spokesperson, which was pretty fun for me, as you can tell. I'm a big Longhorn fan. But yeah, I mean, I'm not against it, and this is sort of always been my stance as manager of the facility. I'm not against it. We would just have to make sure we're going through precautions to there's not anything leaking onto the floor, using tarps. We would probably want the car turned off and pushed into the studio so we're not getting exhaust. But yeah, just approach, reach out to me if it's something you want to do. I'd love to be like, around that day just to kind of help out and also just probably take some photos to
So
show
it's
what we're doing. But yeah, I've also shot some music videos where we did suction cup shots where we I think it was back, I don't know if Mopac Media is around anymore, but we rented some gear where we had a suction cup like rig on the driver's side of the car, and we had one of the Sony camcorders here like attached to that and like safety chained in, and so that way you're getting like the driver's sort of window perspective like in, and we drove around like downtown Austin just to get shots. But I was not, I was stressed the whole time, right? Because it's like a $4,000 camera, and all it takes is the guy who's driving the car to like clip another car, and we're
right.
out that money. So that's also risky. But I've also gone like uh the no budget route, also no insurance route of just following or driving in front of somebody in a pickup truck, with someone sitting in the back of the pickup truck with a camera, like being as steady as you can. And you probably do this with a gimbal. Gimbal didn't exist really when I was doing this, 15 years ago. But yeah, just in the back of the car, just zoomed into the front, like through the glass, and if you don't get a lot of glare and stuff, you can get some shots that way. Um, but we also have green screen, you know, um, pretty large green screens, 13 feet long by 7 feet tall, that you can check out if you're in the producer program. There's no media policy would have been the only certification that you need, as long as you're either paying a subscription or on scholarship. And you could outside also set that up, and light it and have the same, sort of pushing motion and chroma key, and have someone, maybe moving something on the glass to get, like you're going through buildings or something. So you can get pretty creative outside the studio as well.
Yeah. And guys, dude, it has become so much easier to do these kind of shots just as the camera packages have shrunk down smaller and smaller. Like you're to the point now where you could be sitting in the passenger seat, handheld operating and getting a great shot of the driver, right? And it's become way easier and safer to rig cameras to the exterior of cars, like Doug was saying, just because the packages have gotten more manageable.
Is that something that's going to be covered in the rig stabilization class? Uh,
Mhm. We
Yeah,
no.
we don't have anything like that. Yeah, Joe only teaches what we have in stock, but yeah, again, I mean, you're responsible for whatever you're checking out of the building. But yeah, if you were to take, like one of our FX3 cameras and rent, or I don't know, if you're doing it often, I don't know what it costs to buy, but yeah, it's just like a suction cup kit with like an extension arm. It just kind of sits right outside the one of the windows of the car. But yeah, just again, be really careful with it. And you're responsible for that gear if something were to happen with it. But we don't have any policies that says you can't do that with the gear from Lost in Public, but we don't have any car like suction cup kits to check out.
Okay.
just do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Just do it.
Yeah, no, I signed up for the class on Thursday, but I thought y'all had that stuff. But whatever. Just come and
Are you
talk.
in the class Thursday? Great. I'll see you there, man. Tomorrow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was, yeah.
All right, guys. I'll keep going as long as you have questions. But if you don't have questions, then I'm gonna go to bed.
I'm, I don't have anything else. Good night. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good.
All good too. I got it all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.